Hi everyone, my name is Jorge Amigo, and I am the head of cultural programming for the Vancouver Public Library, and I'm going to be your host for today. First, I want to acknowledge that we are hosting this event from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh. And I want to encourage all of you to read and understand the history of this land and the people who have taken care of it for thousands of years, and what it means for you to be here. If you're joining us from another part of the country or another country, there's a great resource that I will share in the chat so you can learn about the land where you live. Now, I'm just taking 1 second to look at some of the comments because I think everyone's okay with sound. Yeah, okay, great. So tonight's event is about getting to know the artists behind Vancouver Mural Festival's Winter Arts Exhibition. Now, in normal times, we would all be in the same venue together and we would all feel each other's warmth. And the artists who you're going to meet will be able to see all of you in the audience and hear how you react to what they share. But we are still in a pandemic, so virtual events are unfortunately what we have for now. So because of that, I'm going to ask you to make your presence felt through the chat. So please, please, please don't be shy. Use the chat to express yourselves, shower us with warm thoughts, so we can all feel more connected and we can feel that you're there paying attention and engage with what the artists are saying. So I have two housekeeping notes about the chat specifically. The first one is when you send a message, make sure that you click on panelists and attendees so that your message, you're participating and everyone can see what you are saying so that your questions, everyone can participate in that. By default, Zoom may have selected panelists only for you. So just take a second right now to select audience plus panelists. Now, if you do need to communicate something to us in the backend directly, that's okay, and just select that. Now, the second housekeeping note is very simple. Be kind. So the four artists here are brave enough to come here and share a part of themselves. So I want us all to honor them by being very kind with our words and with what we say about them. So I also want to say that tonight's event is very special because it's part of Vancouver Mural Festival's Winter Arts, which is a new thing. It's an augmented reality exhibition happening across the city right now until February 28th in sites all over Vancouver. And essentially it's transforming public spaces in our city into an interactive open air gallery. So again, quick poll, has anyone in the audience already seen some of the Winter Arts work around town? I saw Gerald saw the one in Jim Dev Plaza. That's the one you like. Awesome. A Lunar New Year lanterns. Okay. Emily Carr. Great. So I see that a lot of you have seen them. And so we're going to share a link right now so you can see what this whole exhibition is about. And I want to take a second before I start to thank the team at Vancouver Mural Festival for partnering with VPL to create programming around this exhibition. Now, as you may have seen in the slides at the beginning, we are hosting a total of 3 events. So my colleague Jen is going to add the links to the other 2 upcoming events, or actually the links to the page on the VMF website where you can see all the events in one place. So I don't have much more of an intro, so let's get this party started. What we're going to do now is we're going to have 2 separate panels so that this works a little bit better and there's more flow to the conversation. So the first 2 panelists are going to be Caspian Kai and Eric Wagliardo. So Eric and Caspian, can you please join me on stage? And there we go, Eric and Caspian. Awesome. Hi, nice to see you.
Hey, Jorge.
Yeah,
hey, Eric.
Awesome. So I'm going to introduce them very briefly, and then I'm going to introduce the moderator. So Caspian Kai was born and raised in Melbourne, Australia. He's now a Vancouver-based freelance motion designer and 3D artist. His work focuses on digital environments and nature. And so my colleague Jen, who's in the background, is going to share his Instagram account so you can check out his work. And then Eric is a mixed media artist and creative director. He recently directed an AR music video for Childish Gambino and volumetric AR short film regarding homelessness called In Their Shoes. In 2018, Eric also presented a large kinetic sculpture for the World Water Day in New York City, and that was in partnership with Matt Damon and water.org. So again, we're going to share his link there. And to facilitate the conversation between them two, we have Natalia Lebedinskaia. So Natalia, can you join me on stage? All right. Yay.
Hi.
Natalia. Hey, hi Natalia. Natalia is is the director of creative projects for Vancouver Mural Festival. Prior to this role, Natalia was a program director at the Vancouver Biennale, and before that, she was a curator of contemporary art at the Art Gallery of Southwestern Manitoba, and one of 7 curators for Landmarks 2017, which was a national series of contemporary art commissions marking the 150th anniversary of Confederation in Canada's national parks. So, enough from me. Natalia, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jorge, and thank you so much for all of that introduction and for your partnership in putting all of this together. As Jorge said, my name is Natalia. I'm the Director of Creative Projects for the Vancouver Mural Festival. I started in this position in January, and the second day that I was here, I was like, okay, let's do some programming for the Winter Arts Festival, which is starting in, I think at that point, a bit over a month from then. And then Jorge said, we want to partner on the programming. So here we all are. And one of the things that I really love about Artist Talks is the parallels that they bring out amongst artist practices. So that's why I put this together as a series of 2 shorter conversations. And Caspian and Eric are both from a little bit of a film world, and each one of them will go into their art practice, into their process, maybe teach you something about AR that you didn't know, and talk about how they ended up working in this new medium and what they're bringing to it from what they were doing before it existed. So Caspian and Eric, take it away. I think we're going to start with Caspian.
Yeah, sure. Just let me share my screen. I'll show a little bit about my work, and motion graphics is what I mainly do, 3D. So I'll show you a quick video, my showreel, latest one, just so you can get a sense of my work. Not sure if the sound is working. Yeah, so there's a combination of personal projects and artwork and client work, mixture of a lot of different stuff for events and products, and probably saw some stuff for TED in there. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, so motion graphics is a very multidisciplinary and mixed medium kind of industry, like a lot of different fields coming together. So you've got 3D modeling and lighting and texturing and rendering and animation and visual effects, particle simulations, like you see here and you saw in the reel. But then you're also producing stuff for products, like I mentioned, and events, broadcast TV sometimes, a whole lot of different stuff. But it's not interactive. It's not real time like AR is. So this definitely being part of the Mural Fest was something new for me. Like I'd only experimented with AR once before. So it's cool to have the new kind of creative medium to play around in. And in terms of my inspiration and other stuff I do a lot of landscape and nature photography as well, and get out into the forest around Vancouver. And yeah, it's definitely, nature's a big inspiration. And that was a starting point for my AR project for the Mural Fest, was to try and bring a little bit of the forest into the city, into urban spaces. This was my initial kind of mood board. Some combination of like other artists that I admire, and real world, real mushrooms and fungi and plants and stuff like that. And I sort of wanted to figure out how I could put it all together into a small AR interactive piece that would be in the city. So this is initial 3D modeling. Kind of the way I approach it is usually modeling individual assets on their own separately, and then kind of bringing them together into one scene or one creation. The one thing I've left out of this process is the sketches that I did. I did sketch out the whole scene before I jumped in and started putting it together. I'm just a terrible drawing, so I didn't include those. But these are some examples of kind of the initial blocking out and when I started putting all the assets together. And the one on the left is kind of the first concept I had, which is obviously more of a figurative, like a large head. And then the one on the right, which is the one I ended up going with, was more of a whole smaller figure in a meditative pose. And that's another thing I wanted to sort of bring a sense of calm and referencing meditation and mindfulness, as well as that kind of human connection with nature and the fact that we're all part of nature. We're not separate from it. So, yeah. And then this is how it looks as a mesh and if you can even see bones here in the little carpet, because I had to animate and rig that before I exported it to AR. And then this is just with initial colors. And this is an example of texturing. So individual assets, I also wanted to kind of go in and paint them and bake some lighting in and create some variation to the assets. Because if I had have just exported the way they were from Cinema 4D, I wouldn't have got a lot of that detail and information into Spark AR, which is the program we were all using. And that's an example of the main figure that was posed, and then kind of went in and painted some detail on it, even though it's when you actually see the final piece, you barely notice it. And then this is an example of Spark AR, the software I just mentioned, which is what we're using to kind of bring it to life and make it interactive and add animation. So this is where I guess my experience of animation did come into play, except instead of a linear timeline, like in film or video, where you are just editing from, second 0 to second 1 minute or whatever, and then it's over. Had to think more in terms of looping. So you using this node-based programming system and looping animation of different assets within the scene. And then I kind of added some extra particle effects. And you can see these big blue circle spheres here are just the lights. So you have to place lights around and stuff as well. So yeah, it was a good learning process. I'd only used Spark once before, just for like a little Instagram filter thing. So it was cool trying to build something a bit more complex, and you're still kind of limited as to how much detail you can include. So that was a good sort of ceiling on it as well, like being limited to a certain number of polygons and textures and things like that. And this was the final kind of artwork render I did out of 3D's package. So it looks a little different, looks a little more nicely lit and stuff than the AR version, which you can see here on the right is the Spark AR version, just panning around it. And then I'll just quickly show you the final. This is kind of what you'll see if you go down to the city and scope it out and try it out on your phone. I just have got it here on my kitchen table. Just moving around it so you can see how you can interact with it. You can kind of spin it around and stuff like that. But you can also walk around it because you can place it and scale it at any scale you like. And that's kind of cool. It can be really tiny. It could be on the palm of your hand, or it could be filling the whole city square. So yeah, that's pretty much it from me for the stop sharing.
Super cool.
Thank you, Caspian. That you just flew through these slides. It was really interesting to see the back end. I think for both people who have played around with 3D modeling and people who have not, I think it sort of gives a glimpse of the magic that goes behind it, but also the fact that it is still kind of a linear narrative, right? In the on the Spark side, I don't think I ever really realized how close it is to just animation, and that you're really just structuring these loops. I have a question as to where it is. It is in the Vancouver Art Gallery's square, the square right in front of the art gallery. But yeah, it's interesting to see the limitations of Spark as well, and how, even though it is like living in your Instagram or Facebook, that
well, it's cool. That's what I like about AR though, is that compared to VR, you can actually walk around it, and there can be other people, your friends can be there in the space, and you can be having the same experience in the real world, outdoors or wherever it may be, instead of just being constrained to a VR headset. So I kind of like that in terms of the difference between AR and VR and where the future might go with it.
For sure. And I think that's actually a really great segue into the focus of Eric's talk, which is those blurry lines between physical and virtual space, and the way that AR really integrates that digital space into public space of the city, which is something that is a huge interest of mine, and also why I think Winter Arts is really doing something very new to Vancouver, and that partly because of the pandemic, where all suddenly much closer to the digital world in a way than I think we had really been prior to the pandemic, like all of these virtual conferences, all of these virtual Zooms, but also how like we're still very connected to our cities and to the places where we live. Anyways, Eric, I'd love to hear about your practice. Over to you.
Cool, thank you guys. Thanks, Caspian, that was awesome. I have a background that initially started out, I have a degree in fine art, but I went into the advertising industry for quite a long time. So I was really focused on telling like kind of communication stories and corporate stories. But for the last 5 years, I've had a chance to focus in on my personal artwork. So I'd love to share it with you guys, kind of that journey going from some physical installations and how I try to bridge that gap between the physical and the virtual. So let me share my screen real quick. Awesome, cool. So like I was saying, so I started out doing a lot of really brand-driven communication stuff, and that led me to a really interesting space they call experiential. And in experiential, there was a lot of opportunities to go and interact with people physically and directly. And in the world of COVID, a lot of that's gone away. So it's been really fun to really dive into the virtual aspect. But what we're seeing here is this giant robot arm that we programmed to use an Android phone, so that you could walk up and pick out a color of paint and then swing the phone. And the robot arm would actually sling the paint onto a canvas. So this was kind of the world I was dabbling in before COVID hit. I had the good fortune of working on this large scale art installation in New York City at Grand Central. And this was a kinetic sculpture where there was 400, 600 giant water droplets that would animate. So when you were there, you were physically engaged with the space, you were physically engaged with the art. And that was really kind of the sweet spot I was working in for quite a long time. And then this new world was introduced to me where we could start to blend the virtual with the physical. And a lot of the same practices that we were employing to design a physical space could go straight into designing the virtual space. So what we're seeing here is an interactive music video that I directed for Childish Gambino for one of his songs called Algorithm. And we created this musical sequence that you could drop into your space and experience with your friends. You and 4 of your friends could go on a journey through the music. And what was interesting is before we'd work using like CAD files and do architectural drawings and things like that. And then we would go and build it physically. But then we started to work with video game engines like Unity and Unreal to take those same CAD files and just drop them into the virtual space, and then use like a smartphone or a VR headset to be able to then access that 3D content and more access that through augmented reality in the physical space that you're in. So Caspian has such a deep understanding of the three-dimensional world, but I'm coming to this a little bit more from like the physical side and the storytelling side, where we're just trying to understand like what's the user interaction, what's the UX of the experience. So I think that's kind of the sweet spot I'm coming from. I have some more screenshots from the Childish Gambino experience. You would drop down a little portal, and you would walk through that into this cave, and you would unlock this world that Donald helps us create. And so you see here, you can look up the portal back into the real world. So this was my first really like hands-on digging deep into the augmented reality space. After that, we worked on this really interesting art installation that took place in Boston in a couple locations, where we had a physical art installation as the anchor, but users could take a tablet or an iPhone and point at the art installation and watch a 6-minute long short film about the working homeless. And so in America and in a lot of places, there's a lot of folks who can work a job and still not be able to afford rent. Or in this case, this was a nurse. So she had a full-time job, but she was still living in her car. So we actually did a lot of research into this woman's life and then created a fictional version of it. So, you know, we changed the names to protect the innocent kind of thing. But what was interesting, I think, you know, the story itself was compelling. And I think we were able to really touch a lot of people through the storytelling. But with the technology, we were able to let people see this in a first-person perspective. They became the film director. They got to step into the environment and see this woman's life to scale. So she was life-size. The car was life-size. They were in the space with her. And we did some fun little tricks, like as the user would move around with their iPad or with the tablet, the actress's head would move with them. And we tried to maintain that power of the gaze so that they were actually looking, you know, at the person who was watching. And so I think this was a really fun way to like push the technology to tell the story, to increase that engagement. So since COVID hit, I've been in a very different space. We're not out there doing the same types of installations. We're not out there engaging with people in the same way. So sitting here at home, I was watching a lot of my downtown area in Dallas, Texas, and also in New York, where I lived and worked for 15 years, get boarded up. And because of the civil unrest and because of COVID, so many small businesses everywhere were being boarded up and abandoned or being closed down temporarily. So I started working with as many folks as I could to start installing art into the windows of these abandoned places. And so what you're seeing here was a three-dimensional jungle environment that was just trying to add color and a calming place where it used to be boarded up. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on the time, but I had the good fortune of visiting Vancouver shortly before COVID hit, and I fell in love with the city. So when I saw the invitation to participate with the Vancouver Mural Festival, I jumped at the opportunity because I loved the city, I loved the art, I loved the architecture, and I loved just kind of wandering around. So I wanted to bring a little bit of this work I've been doing in that space, trying to bring a colorful, serene, peaceful moment to a storefront. And so this was a little bit of the behind the scenes as I was working from my home here in Dallas, Texas, to recreate that jungle environment in augmented reality. So I didn't go as far into the detail or the process, but this was just kind of giving you a taste of how I started to translate that three-dimensional environment, but really for the purpose of trying to enliven the storefronts and just really trying to become a part of that art movement that I think is not letting COVID slow us down. So I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second and we can jump out maybe for a quick Q&A. Cool.
Yeah, sure. We're actually doing great for time, Mark. So everyone is doing a really great job of keeping time and getting through their slides and showing us kind of little tidbits of being behind the scenes. And Eric, I'm really interested in this idea of first person perspective. And again, it's like one of these really kind of simple thoughts about AR, but that one that I think is not really widely talked about with it, where because we have such an intimate relationship with our phones or devices or whatnot, that the information that goes into it and the way that engagement with public space works is much more intimate as a first person experience. So it has this capacity for empathy and this capacity for like an emotional response to it. So curious to know a little bit more about that, but also we have a lot of really great questions in the chat. We're going to answer a lot of them at the end in the general Q&A, but wondering if we can talk a little bit about this like first person perspective and potential for storytelling in that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was in full screen mode before, so I missed all the questions, so I apologize. Yeah, so I think one of the really beautiful things about virtual reality is you're really immersed in this virtual world. And some people call virtual reality the empathy machine because you're just in it, you're in that environment. And I think what's interesting about augmented reality is you give this agency to people to explore the environment with the addition of an extra layer of storytelling. And I think that's a brave new frontier that really hasn't been explored fully, where we give people the ability to become the director, to become the cameraman, become the director of photography. And so I think from my perspective, we put a lot of energy into creating kind of a sandbox where people can explore the art from their own perspective and take the reins. And then we just kind of step back and let people explore. So I think that's kind of the starting point. I could probably talk a lot about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you're really like, you're kind of giving agency to the viewer in this really interesting way that also is quite constrained. So it's this balance of the two. And Eric, there was a question for you in the chat that someone named Karen, Karen is wondering about the nurse's story, and if you could tell us a little bit more about the process there, like how was the relationship with her? Did she know that you were observing? Was she?
Yeah, absolutely. So this person, we had an outreach program. So we, excuse me, worked with quite a few nonprofits. So there was a bank named Santander who was sponsoring the project, and they were also donating money to a lot of different outreach programs that were going into the community and raising people up and out of homelessness. And so through that process, they were introduced to this woman, and they learned about her story. And so they shared her story with us. So she definitely was aware, and we interviewed her, and we drew from her life story. And in that film, she had the job, but because of medical expenses, she couldn't make rent and maintain her financial stability. So fortunately, in her situation, it was what drove her to the situation where she was living in her car was directly related to medical expenses. So that was the process for her. But through that, the donations from the bank, they got her back into housing, and there was a very positive story out of that, a very happy ending, actually. In the documentary, we tell a heartbreaking story, but there actually was a happy ending at the end in real life.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. It's like what we hope art does and what we hope like empathy in public space does. Mm. And also because homelessness is both so visible and the nuance of it is often so lost. Mm. It kind of has that balance. Caspian, I have some technical questions for you. Yeah. Jen is learning tilt brush and gravity sketch and is wondering what tools you use. That's actually a question from Gerald that Jen has sent me, and also how long did it take for you from first concept to final AR?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, in terms of VR tools like Tilt Brush and stuff and Gravity Sketch, I haven't really spent much time. I actually only just got a VR headset and I've barely used it. Um, but it's something I've been meaning to get into. And I'm personally most interested in Oculus Medium because it's basically just 3D modeling and sculpting, 3D sculpting, but with the VR, so you can kind of move the object around and play with it and use it like you're doing real sculpting, but virtually. But personally, like that whole project that I showed was all sort of, most of it was done in Cinema 4D, which is just a regular 3D package, kind of like, it's very similar to Maya and Blender and 3ds Max and all those packages. But then I also used Substance Painter for the texturing, which gives you a lot more control over that. And yeah, I do use a bunch of other software, a lot of plugins. I've been getting into Houdini more and more, which is a really powerful, complex 3D package that a lot of visual effects studios use. So anytime you see like fire and smoke and rain and all that stuff, it's usually done with Houdini, and it's takes people decades it's people in their 60s that are, VFX gurus that are still learning that program. Like it just keeps changing and evolving. It's a lifelong learning thing, really. And in terms of this project, like how long it took, I usually try and track my time. So I saw that question pop up and I jumped into my time tracker, and it looks like about like a week, like 40 hours worth of working hours. I'm not sure if I recorded all the hours, but it was very sporadic and chopped up. And like we started in December and we finished basically end of January. I think we start end of November. Actually, we think we started the end of November. So it was kind of like 6 to 8 weeks of time that we had to work on it. But yeah, I had client work. We had holidays in between. And I think one of the things I probably didn't track was just that kind of ideation and, sketching and doodling and coming up with the ideas. Like that stuff can take quite a while, and you do it when you're not at a computer, so I'm not tracking it. It's like, ideas come to you when you're on a walk or you're in the shower or something. And that's the way design works. You can't kind of track every hour that goes into it.
I knew about Houdini from like, way past life, where I took like 3D modeling courses in my undergrad and realized that I'm not quite cut out for it, but it's great to know that it is still as complicated as then, and that people are still using it for all that super cool particle stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, it's super powerful, but very complex.
Yeah. On that note, I'm going to pass it back over to Jorge, who will introduce the next artists, and we'll hear from them, and then we'll do a roundtable at the end. Thank you so much, Caspian and Eric.
Yeah, thank you so much, Caspian, Eric, Natalia. That was wonderful. And so now we're going to move on to the second panel of the evening with Extra Crunchy and Saida Saetgar. So can you both join me on stage, or actually the three of you, because Extra Crunchy is actually a duo. So everyone please join me on stage. Hi, Saida. Hello, Extra Crunchy.
Hey guys.
Hey guys.
Hello.
So I'm going to do a quick intro and then get going with the chat with both of you, or three of you. So Extra Crunchy are an artist duo from Tel Aviv. They travel the world creating art, and they combine murals with AR. They were actually part of last year's Mural Fest as artists. And Saida is a freelance 3D artist and motion designer. Her style has been described as cosmic renaissance and magical dream aesthetics. She's crafted visuals for Dua Lipa and has worked with various global brands. And her personal artworks have been showcased in New York, Los Angeles, and Art Basel. So very excited to be chatting with both of you. I'm going to ask you first, Saida, very quickly. I know that you have an interesting story about how you got into this kind of work. You, I believe, were studying finance in school and dropped out and became an artist. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a very weird story indeed. So I'm originally from Russia. I came to Vancouver 8 years ago to continue my studies at finance at SFU. And somewhere in the middle, I figure out that like I spend most of my free time doing graphic design. So like even though I studied finance, I just always dabbled into graphic design software. I worked as an illustrator for school newspaper and all that, and I was very lucky to get a scholarship at Vancouver Film School and started my creative journey in 2015 at digital design program. So yeah, and originally I thought I would be like web designer or something like this, but it also didn't happen, as we can tell now. So after graduating, actually I got a job as a 2D illustrator and motion designer, which is quite a bit different from 3D. I thought I would never touch 3D in my life because like, honestly, like it was like too technically challenging to me back then. But then somehow like I got into it and I bought Octane Render, start rendering and couldn't stop ever since. And that's what I still keep doing.
That's amazing. And so I think today you're going to show us a little bit about the work that you created for Winter Arts and take us through that.
Oh yeah, I'm going to share my screen a bit.
Awesome, share your screen.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn my video off while you do that.
I'm gonna, okay, sure. Yeah, can you see my screen now? Okay, perfect. So this is me. This is the software I use, Instagram handle. Okay, this is the kind of like to give you a bit of understanding of kind of things I've been up to. So it's like futuristic, a little bit like magical, organic, all that sort of stuff. Here is my demo reel. Yeah, I'm gonna just play it. So this is it. And now a bit more about specifically the piece I created for Vancouver Mural Festival. So the reason I decided to do this year is because I always wanted to have a taste of like a process of creating augmented reality project, but I never get a chance to do this because like, to be honest, it's like a pretty new medium. And as you know, I don't have a background in it as well. So like, I just thought that it's such a good opportunity to just try new tools and like see where it will go. So yeah, I started with concept art. The first the version that you see is looking more like an ice cream. So a lot of details and all that. As far as concept goes, I was thinking that one thing that we all need now is the ultimate escape experience, because from all our like uneasy reality. So I try to create this dreamscape sort of vibes that will help, like the kind of space where you can go to let go and just breathe. And like, as you can see, the person on my tower is meditating and looking in the space. And I think like when you're looking at the stars, you realize how temporary everything is, and how after winter there is always summer. So I wanted to kind of like evoke this kind of vibe and convey this sentiment. So yeah, this is how the artwork developed. Lots of different versions. And this is the final. Yay. Yeah, so that's it.
That's incredible. So I want you to tell us a little bit about the relationship of that work with COVID, because it sounds like, you know, we're in a place where everyone is stuck at home and we're consumed by dread or by worry. And you seem to have created a work that allows us to, in a way, escape into calmness and a meditative space. Was that part of your thinking behind creating this piece?
Oh yeah. I felt like I really want to travel, and I wish I could travel somewhere nice and exotic, like warm right now. But there is like nowhere I can go because borders are closed and all that. So it was such a. I was creating it, keeping that in mind, that like a lot of people probably also want to travel somewhere in some space. But how about like traveling in a dreamland?
Yeah,
It's even better than traveling somewhere exotic. So I created this with this sentiment in mind. Yeah.
I love that. So this is a really good segue to Extra Crunchy because there you are. I hear that you are traveling artists. You have a traveling lifestyle, and the way you came to Vancouver was right before the pandemic started because you've been traveling with your art. Can you tell us what the last 4 or 5 years of your life and work have looked like in a nutshell, and what this traveling has meant for you?
Well, first of all, thanks for having us here, and we're happy to share all this the information and our work. I wonder if you want to see the stuff later after we talk a little bit.
Yeah,
about
yeah. Let's talk a little bit about just a little bit about this travel connection and your work, and then it'll show us the piece.
Well, kind of a year after we met, we felt like this kind of cosmic explosion happening, and we wanted to escape our country, our homeland, which is Israel, and go travel around Central America mostly and see wherever it takes us.
Looking for adventures.
So we kind of went into the adventure, and we started Extra Crunchy the first day we landed in Panama, which was the first destination. So in Panama, a funny thing happened where we found ourselves connecting to a hostel chain that hired us to be their official graffiti artists. So we had a chance to create murals all around, and it was really our beginning of our murals together. So we didn't yet have like a specific style that was, and we were still needed to kind of learn how to work together. So this was an amazing opportunity to also build our portfolio and to learn how to work together and create a style. That was 8 months. And from then on, we started going to music festivals and art festivals, and we had a lot to show, and we were happy to get accepted to places all around Central America, and Guatemala and Costa Rica.
Basically, we were in different bits and pieces all around the world. Looking at the map, I was wanting to do maybe a slide of a map of places we were, but then I was embarrassed because the world is so big, and we were like not even in half of it. But we had a chance to travel to India together, and we had a chance to travel to England together and meet different artists and create excellent conversations and be really optimistic with the art world, because there's amazing things happening all around. You just have to tap right into them.
So and part of our plan, by the way, it was to immigrate to Canada. Before we left Israel, we already did the application, and it was supposed to take 2 years. So we said, let's just spend that time traveling and making art. And
2 years became 4.
Yeah, it became 4. We had no idea when it's going to happen, or even if it's going to happen. We didn't hear back for such long times. So we went with the flow. We really went wherever there was a bed and there was a wall to paint on, and we met friends along the way, and we learned a lot about like how we want to live our lives, and
how to work together,
how to be minimalistic,
the kind of art we want to make, because we had a lot of intention of all the things we want to put in one frame, that is the mural. And it became more and more creative, and more put just the most positive message and give that positive punch to everybody as much as possible. So we were just accelerating our ways as we go. Still.
That sounds like the perfect setup to show us the actual mural and how it relates to all these stories.
Yeah. Okay. So like the journey, although it was a physical journey, it was also a spiritual journey in many ways. I'm gonna share my screen here.
I'm gonna go off video.
So this is us in our ever-changing logo.
So what started the VR is actually in a small gallery downtown called Dimensions Gallery. We got to make a mural for them, and they gave us a free hand, which was very generous. And then we had the thought of creating a VR experience, an AR experience, sorry. And we had the chance to play around with it, and they really gave us this freedom. And the moment we were realizing what we have here, we understood that this is a really good opportunity to bring people out of their houses and have them walking and being physical and walking around the space and connecting the different layers of reality that since we don't have the opportunity to see the whole spectrum of light, and we can see to only a very limited amount, we can create a layer that we can see different things, that will give us information, that will inspire us, that will bring this whole 2D world to a 3D, and hopefully ourselves to the next dimension as well. So this was a piece that we did for a bowling alley in North Vancouver. This was also a good opportunity of...
It's the first bowling alley in North Van.
Yeah.
It just opened about a month ago. And it also has an AR experience. It's like while we started doing our first AR, we felt it's a great combination of making an art piece and bringing it up to life. So naturally in the VMF this summer, we created this piece, which eventually was with the AR. It looked like this.
We called it the spectrum of emotions, because we were playing on the idea that there's a spectrum of light that we get exposed to a small part of it, and the colors are going in a way of a certain gradient of the vibration of our emotions. So from the lowest vibration, that is fear, that you can see on the right, the extreme right, that is red, and it goes up to the orange, and then the yellow, and then the turquoise. It goes on until the purple, but we only had room for so much. The idea was to have the pure energy, especially exactly in the middle, spreading all the love and the beauty through all those different masks, even though they can show different emotions that might feel or portray something that could be a little bit scary. There is no bad karma. It is all a gift, and we are all blessed. Is it too hippie? Yeah. Is it too hippie? Was I going too hippie?
Judy and I are really exploring a lot of the spirituality and in these terms of the chakras and their colors and their frequencies, and trying to raise the frequency is part of our language, raising the frequency, raising the vibes. So this is naturally an aspect of our vibes.
We don't want to force our ideas on anybody. It's just part of our research, and we offer you to join our extra crunchy adventure at all time.
So for the piece that we did for the winter arts, we created this character, which started out as a sketch that Turi did and eventually became a painting, and we kind of explored this world. The image on the left is the concept, which we called possessions.
We like
which possessions, possessions has like a dual meaning to it, possessing stuff and being possessed. So it's part of the same thing. As we saw, as travelers, we got to kind of let go of a lot of our stuff, and that's part of what gave us a lot of freedom to not hang to those things. So this is kind of an expression of that. And for the piece, we called it Keymaster. We took that image, we wanted it to be big, to create this character that is
epic.
It's an entity, it's like a shaman, we don't know, like it's like this thing that comes to you, and it's from another world. And in the image, we really brought it to as huge as being like above the city, coming from space or whatever, maybe another dimension.
Granting us with a little bit of spookiness.
Exactly. We love the spooky part. We have this thing where we call creepy, trippy, creepy, cute, which really defines our style. And this is part of the research that we did also, kind of defining each color, each vibration into certain emotions or expressions that we can then get into the design and the animation of it.
You can see that we made some notes so we can match the sounds to correspond with the mask and the design of the mask and the frequency that we wanted to portray.
So like from the get-go, we wanted to add sound to it. You can see here on the right how the head kind of reveals itself. We wanted to kind of have that kind of activation to it, that you kind of activate this character and bring it to life, and then you can play with it. So we wanted it to be interactive, which is it's the first time we did kind of an interactive AR. The ARs that we did previously were all just a loop of animation that would run over and over again. And here we had an opportunity to work with VMF and with a technical consultant, and he really helped us a lot. Mike helped us a lot to kind of get all the buttons working and all the sounds and get everything together. So you can see like it pops out the colors. I don't know how many of the audience have seen it, but if you go to the location, you can click the buttons and have a sound also activated with it.
Full experience. You can also pose with it. We just realized that you can even make the head go in the direction of your own head once you are there. We just discovered it when we went out to check it. It was pretty sweet.
Wow. That's incredible. Thank you. I mean, I just saw a comment from someone that says that it's that all experiences are gifts. And I love seeing how, all the thought that goes into every element that you picked, and the research and the kind of the spiritual journey that you're taking people with you. So Saida, I want to join us again. I was going to say one of the threads that I found that connects both of your works is that there's this experience of, in a way, finding a way to escape our current reality, like finding another alternative space to be in. Either the mask is looking over the city, as you said, in a very creepy but cute way, also reminding us of what's looking over us. But then with Saida, you physically invite us to step into another portal. Yeah, you're all nodding. So
yeah,
it's reminders that there is something bigger out there. It's such a I think it's what we are missing. Like sometimes people say that they need more meaning in their life, and I feel like what it means to have this sense of meaning is like when you're feeling that you're part of something bigger than yourself. So yeah, that's basically what I see in both of our works. It's like something is bigger than us.
Not only in our works, all of like a lot of the works that were done for the festival were kind of in the same world of like portals and this like other dimensions.
Good messages about meditation and positivity and bringing organic to the city, and those are all.
It's pretty amazing that like we didn't know each other at all. None of us.
Yeah. United by the mission to raise funds.
So I'm curious about something that you're just saying, that there's a certain confluence of messages or topics. If there's something about the medium itself that creates an opportunity or pushes you towards creating works that cause you to want to imagine utopias or escape landscapes, just simply because if I go into a museum and I see a painting on a wall or a sculpture, it just exists there and it's static. But in a way, when I walk through these pieces and I pull out my phone and make them appear, it's almost like they're coming at me from an unexpected place in an unexpected location, and you're placing a work, you're superimposing it in a location that generally doesn't have that. And so I wonder if, as an artist, when you are creating a piece and you think of how people are going to experience it, if that reality of having the work literally pop out at you informs the subject matter, what you want people to see. There's an element of that.
Well, you know, we didn't know how it's going to look until we saw it in the large scale, right? We thought
Oh yeah.
it really makes a lot of difference. So we had to imagine how it would be and how people would look compared to it with the scale and all, and hoping for the best to see how it looks in the end. And we were, I can only say that for our perspective, it was kind of a grander experience than we thought. Like it was larger than we originally planned, which is really nice. And even that extra surprise of like positioning behind the mask, and then it kind of connects to your head and really moves around, was just an additional bonus.
And also after we got to see other people's works, we're like, oh, you can do that. Oh, we could have done that.
Right, yeah. We get so many ideas of how you can use this in many ways.
Yeah, just infinite possibilities.
Yeah, I think I was like the opposite from Extra Crunchy. I was like so full of ideas. I had so much stuff I want to do because I kind of tested different AR, VR apps before, like Unreal, for example, or Unity. And I was thinking, oh yeah, like it's going to be similar. But then like I discovered that it's like all my grandiose plans like would not fit in the format that like we wanted. Yeah, and I created what I created.
Yeah, we had to give up ideas too, like along the way. It's part of the process. Yeah, like you really don't know how the end product is gonna look until you have to
tune in,
send it over.
Yeah.
But we had like the sound aspect of it was something that we didn't have a lot of experience with, and we wanted it to be more like music at the beginning. And as we went through it, we kind of, you know, it kind of emerged from something that wasn't really clear to us. How does this, a frequency of a chakra sound like, you know, and even the masks themselves. So
where do you find free sounds?
Yeah.
Where do you find them?
Yeah,
something that's.
Oh no. Yeah, I know how this feels like.
Yeah, it's really hard to find because we're not creating it ourselves. So.
And we don't have the references. We're not musicians yet. We would love to create music when the time is right. I suppose that this was like maybe sort of a brief opportunity. But that was just here. Go ahead, do sounds. You have to do. I mean, you don't have to. Yeah, but like the ideas in our heads are really pulling you out to do all those things and to push all those boundaries, because next time you'll be able to do this and more. So why not push the boundaries right now? But you only have two hands and just a little bit of time and restrictions.
It sounds like it's a medium where you're constantly, like the sky is the limit as long as the technology exists for it, but you're constantly pushing up against the technology. And I imagine the technology is developing very fast. So I'm wondering,
well, with Spark AR, there are like technical limitations that are still holding us back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
so different from Unreal Engine, for example, where you can do pretty much anything in comparison, any size. Yeah, like because I think it's because Spark AR designed for face filters primarily, and the use that is assumed is face filters, not necessarily the art pieces like we did. So there are not even a lot of tutorials on this, honestly. So it's pretty new and emerging.
So I'm gonna say that because that conversation is relevant to everyone else, I'm gonna invite everyone else to join us. Eric, Caspian, Natalia, join us, and then we can continue this chat because it became very universal all of a sudden. All right, hi everyone.
Yeah, when you listen to the things, the segues just kind of happen.
It just happen naturally.
Yeah, the limitations of Spark AR did come up a lot in the technical process for Winter Arts, because on one hand, it's of course like built into your Instagram, and training people's behaviors in AR is something that Facebook and Instagram is very like focused on doing, which is why it was built for face filters.
Yeah.
But then now we're really trying to like break out of that as artists do. So it's this like moment of friction between what we're trying to do with it and what it's made for. But I think that's what like makes it get better. So
Yeah.
we are very much helping Spark AR.
Yeah, that's the
that-
reason I joined Vancouver Mural Festival, honestly, because I was thinking that it would be such a great opportunity to dabble into Spark AR, like using it for art specifically, not just face filters.
Yeah, and maybe all of us could, well, all of you could talk a little bit more about like the technical process of back and forth that made this happen, because I think this was also kind of a unique situation in which we didn't come to you for completed projects. It was really like wanted to walk through this process with the artist and the curator, Tom Kua, so, and the technical consultations. So I'm gonna leave that as an open-ended question.
Yeah, I think Eric, you wanted to join, to jump in and say something.
Yeah, I work a lot in Unreal Engines. That's where I do most of my work. And it's interesting because Unreal is so incredibly powerful, like Saida was saying. Well, what's interesting is it's not made for the masses necessarily. It's amazing as a game engine, and Fortnite is powered by Unreal. But when I work with people and they're like, let's do an augmented reality or let's do a virtual reality project, it always requires this extra step of downloading an app or getting people into it somehow. So I think there's this really interesting trade-off between Spark AR having that audience and things like Snapchat and their environment, like with their Lens creator, to be able to have a lightweight method to get that augmented reality into people's hands versus having all the bells and whistles with Unreal. But unfortunately with that one, you have to tell people, okay, now go to the App Store and do this thing, now do this other thing, and then you get to see the thing. And so there's this constant trade-off, unfortunately, right now with the power versus the audience and the accessibility. And so I think that's something that we all really face right now.
Yeah. I had something and then I got lost there. But technically, I come from a 3D background, 3D animation. I was a modeler in studios and head of modeling and art director. I had a lot of different positions to see and work with artists. And now that there are these limitations, I kind of like having to kind of low tech it a little bit, to go with polygonal stuff that it's more like gaming. It's kind of simplified stuff for me. But like this whole interactivity gives you something that I didn't have access to doing animation, which is all kind of pre-rendered and ready to view, and it's always the same. And using Spark AR for being like making an interactive experience really brings you into the game as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to say similar. Like I kind of liked having the limitations. Like at first I didn't. I was kind of like, why can't I do all this cool stuff that I want to do, make it look pretty? But I had to figure out other ways to do it. Like the texturing with substance and baking them in and stuff like that. I also looked into like baking lighting from the 3D package and render engine, but it was pretty time consuming and complex and not really worth it. And then you're also limited as to like the texture size in megabytes and stuff like that in Spark. But yeah, I totally get what Eric was saying about it's an accessibility thing. Like everyone needs to be able to run this on their phones, and that includes like old iPhones. So as soon as you go to something like Unreal, like how do you make sure it's going to run on older devices with crappy graphics cards in them and stuff? I mean, maybe you could come up with some sort of LOD thing where it like video games, where it runs at a lower resolution, a lower frame rate, and takes off all the reflections and stuff like that. But starts to get really complex, and it's probably going to be a much bigger project that requires a team to work on it, and it becomes like a game at that point. And the fact that we were all able to pull this off as like individuals or duos with some technical assistance from Mike, I think it worked pretty well.
By the way, I want to mention something since we brought up Mike. Mike was amazing at tech support, like amazing. If not Mike, I don't know. I don't know what would happen to my project. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike says hi and thank you from the chat window.
Yeah. I think it's funny you were talking about baking light. I can jump in on that one. I wasn't going to bake light, so I actually just rendered everything as transparent PNGs. So I actually took my 3D assets, just flattened them completely into 2D cards. So I actually completely cheated. So I don't know about you guys, but I was like, you know what, I'm not going to get the polygon count I want, or even like the verts. So, you know, I'm not even going to go 3D. So everything was like, I think my polygon count was like 100. And it was all just 2D cards.
That's definitely a game engine technique right there. Like I remember the early days of like doing VR, and there was a thing called VRML that I used at my first job when we were using Maya, and we were trying to create interactive experiences, and we would do the exact same thing. All your plants and like objects that looked nice were actually just cards, and they rotate towards the camera. So
exactly.
It looks like they're real.
And like an Unreal with the LEDs, at some point it makes them 2D cards. You know, so if you're doing like a massive open world, no matter what, you know, the farthest, you know, viewpoint is always going to be a 2D card. So I just went straight to there.
All these optical illusions kind of make you wonder about this reality. Like, what is 2D and does look like 3D? And
yeah, I was gonna say you're just building theater sets, aren't you? Because that is like any good opera or whatever theater set. It's just layers and layers and layers of 2D things that become more and more 2D as they recede further into the background.
Yeah. Only eyes in one thing, and the others is like blurry. So whoever is creating it.
So
and
yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, Spark only gives you like 4 lights, I think, as well. So like faking the lighting was such a huge thing as well. So I spent way more time like playing with the transparent PNGs to fake lighting than I did actually doing any kind of modeling.
So, yeah, there's no actual drop shadow, which is crazy. Like you have to create like a dark spot and fake a shadow if you want.
So I was gonna jump in because there's the 4 of you or the 5 of you are such experts, and this can go very deep into the weeds. But I wanted to create a space for people who maybe are new to this world. I think Carla is commenting on it, just to give a sense of if someone were to start, or a lay person like myself who is not in the 3D modeling world and the animation world, what would be the place to get into this? Do you approach it from a computer engineering science perspective or from graphic design? Have you all arrived at this from different layers and just started learning on your own? Like, how do you get into this world to creating these pieces? I'm just hearing about software that I've never heard of, and I'm trying to, for myself, understand how does one become you?
Well, the interesting thing is that like as time goes by, things are getting easier for people to get into. I started way back about 20 years ago, and I had to learn everything myself. There was no internet. It was like pressing buttons and learning. And even Spark AR, there's not so much tutorials like Saida said. So you kind of need to figure it out. So if you come from a place where you're an artist that wants to express himself, and you just want to start learning a software and start exploring and opening a file that is already ready, like a sample file, and kind of learning how they did what they did there. That's kind of how my process of just like studying and learning how to work it out. What about you guys?
Well, speaking of me, because I started, like I'm the newest of all of you guys. You're all like been here for a while. I've been here only for 4 years, and in 3D, I've been only for 2 years, which is even less like funny. Yeah, I would say that technical problem solving skills are really important in this whole thing. Like one thing I discovered, the reason why I didn't start from the beginning is because I felt like I had a lack of technical knowledge in general to even hop on 3D. It's like I'm self-taught mostly in 3D, and it's so hard to start without any technical background in it. That's one thing I'm gonna mention.
Yeah, I'm also self-taught, and I would just say like one of my college professors said that you don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to look for everything. And
how
so
to
just
Google.
yeah, if you know how to Google, like I've learned so much off of YouTube. You know, just just from a technical standpoint, if you want to learn to do what we did, you can download Spark for free. Facebook, I think there's a link in the QA. You can download the software and just start tomorrow or today. and just start Googling, just start YouTubing, and there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is YouTube University, but also like Spark's free and it's pretty accessible and there's tutorials. And then Blender's also free, and that's an amazing, it's getting better and better. Like it's an open source free 3D application that anyone can download, and there's tons of tutorials for it. And you start off making a box and then you like learn how to model something and go from there. Like it's, you just have, the hardest part of anything is starting. Like once you start and you figure out, oh, this is what I want to do, I'm going to search on YouTube how to do that and go from there.
Yeah, and it's also
and
like,
don't give up.
Yeah, it's very kind of frustrating, and you think like, oh my God, maybe I'm just not getting this, but then you realize, no, these are actually just the problems I'm going to keep solving and keep getting better and better at solving. Like it's not you, it's the software. And as you can hear from a lot of the panelists, it's like how they're finding their ways around it as well. So Spark AR actually recently released something called Spark AR Curriculum. So they're trying to get more people into learning how to use it. So that's pretty cool. I, found it through kind of finding resources that I can share as part of this if people were asking. But then also Nancy Baker Cahill is we're doing like a lunchtime chat. I sent you I did link to a wrong Facebook event with her. So I'm gonna get Jorge to find the right one. I don't know how I managed to link it to the.
We'll link it in.
Yeah. But the whole point of that conversation will be that she used to be a painter. And then someone said, hey, you should try doing this in AR. And she had zero background in it. She was like just mostly working in painting. And she went from that to establishing her own public art AR app called Fourth Wall. So she went from like, hey, maybe you should try this AR thing, way before Spark was a thing, to now running this Fourth Wall AR app project. So it's
yeah, it sounds like I feel like I'm, as someone who doesn't know this world, I feel like I'm witnessing a frontier being broken.
And that's what's really exciting about it. And there's a lot of Vancouver is actually one of the biggest AR VR hubs in the world, which is something that's like also not widely talked about, but it is like one of the biggest centers for it. So it's kind of a cool place to do a fully AR festival.
That's a great way to wrap this conversation. The reason you're all here for this, it's a hub of this, and I'm very excited that this festival is happening. I want to share something before we go. It's Saida's birthday.
Oh,
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
С днем рождения!
Yeah. I'm joining Club 27 today, so Club 27, the conspiracy theory.
Oh yeah.
All the celebrities who died at 27.
Well, the limits on partying in this year should keep you nice and safe.
Right.
Well, happy birthday, and thank you everyone. We're running out of time, so thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone, and tune in for the next one. Jorge has shared all the links, and maybe we'll share Jen will share the link to the next panel that's coming next week, I think.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us, Eric, Saida, Rafi, Tuti, Caspian. Thank you, Natalia, for joining us. If you want to exit, I'll just do my outro message official. But thank you everyone for joining, and it was wonderful. And I hope you can join the next couple of events, and hope the audience can go see your works very soon.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thanks everybody.
And thanks to everyone on the chat. It's really great to know there is someone out there that I'm not just talking to my computer.
Yeah,
This is really what makes
it was really
this
nice
experience so much less eerie.
Yeah.
And thanks everybody at the Vancouver Mural Festival. Appreciate you guys.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
So I'm gonna be alone here talking to the screen now. thank you everyone for joining. If you like this event, I really encourage all of you to check the rest of the events that are happening, the 2 other talks around the series. My colleague Jen shared them on the link on the chat there, but if you can't find them there for whatever reason later, you can go to the VPL's Facebook page. I suggest that you like it, and then you can see the upcoming events there. The other way to find out about VPL events in general is to subscribe to our email newsletter. And again, in general, our Facebook page is a very good way to find out about some of the best events that we put on. Now, we would love it if you gave us feedback about this event. It's really important for us as a public institution. Our role is to serve you. And so when we put on events, it's to make sure that we're fulfilling your needs. And our goal is to basically put on events that people care about. So please give us feedback to help us keep getting better at producing events. There's a link that my colleague Jen is putting on right now for you to give us feedback. It's a quick survey. Now, on that note, I want to tell you about one event coming up in 2 days on Thursday. It's not related to Winter Arts, but it's an event that you should not miss. So every year, the Vancouver Public Library for the last few years has a program called the Indigenous Storyteller in Residence. And this year, the Indigenous Storyteller in Residence is launching, or just launched the program, and they're going to be doing a launch event, like an introduction event. So we're going to welcome, her name is Kung Jade, and it's going to be on Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m. So please join us 7 to 8 p.m. The links will be placed on the chat right now. And it's going to be a beautiful event. There's going to be music and storytelling. So please join for that. And that's it for tonight. That's all I have. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to do the awkward wave and disappear slowly. But I'm going to keep this event open for a few minutes after I leave, just so that you can go through the chat and click on any links that you forgot to click on. And the slides are going to show you what the next events are coming up. So thanks, everyone. I'm going to disappear and hope to see you at a new event. Ciao.